Perfect. All right. Welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Dominique Earle. I'm sure I've met most of you here. I'm here with the Executive Director of the Hispanic Latino Commission of Michigan, Dr. Felipe Lopez Sustaita, to share his story of the immigrant worker experience from the field to the Michigan State Capitol. Let's please give him a big Google welcome.
Thank you, Dominic.
Of course. And it really wouldn't be a true Google welcome without an icebreaker. So I'd love to kick it off with asking you, as a second generation Latina myself, living in the US, I feel there's a certain obligation to keep my Latinidad alive, whether that be speaking Spanish, teaching others about my identity, dancing, advocating for the community, et cetera, or even carrying out traditions. And with the Day of the Dead just recently finishing the last few days, can you talk to us about maybe one of your favorite family traditions that you carry out to keep your culture alive?
Yeah, so family traditions, I always think of Christmas. You know, we were so poor that tamales, right? So you unwrap something the next day. So we didn't have actual presents, but the tamales was always a good sign of that we were doing good. We might not gotten the Air Jordans or the beautiful things that we could have dreamed of, but we had tamales, and it's something that my mom still does, and it's a tradition that makes me remember of, and still even today, like that's still most important thing. So thank you, yeah, for embracing the Day of the Dead, and it's just part of our culture, being Latino, Latina in this country. So
absolutely, thank you. Great. So I'd love to dive right into the topic for here today by going back to the beginning of your story. Before you accomplished your career and your multiple degrees that you've received, can you tell us about your childhood and how you became a part of the migrant worker community in the United States?
Yes. And I just want to acknowledge too. I want to thank Dominic. She was I was a keynote speaker for Cesar Chavez, who is a legend and an advocate for Latinos. And we were at Eastern Michigan University. There was about 500 people. And that day I just felt, the Holy Spirit. I felt, that I had a mission to go there and inspire some of the young people from all over the state, young people. And so I want to acknowledge, so thank you very much for making this happen and for being there. And for Google to be so involved with a community that you happen to be there that day. So going back, so I was born in Matehuala, San Luis Potosí, Mexico. I was the youngest of 12 really, but 8 of us lived. And we lived in poverty. We grew up, poor, but I was raised here in the US. I came to this country. And luckily, my father was a bracero back in World War II. When the American men were going to war, they brought in Mexican men to work in the agriculture. And so that was our first glimpse of how we even ended up in the U.S. It was through that journey that brought us to America. And so my journey began since I can remember. My entire childhood was working in the field. So And I don't know how, but all of the people in my village would move around. We'd move around. We'd go to Tennessee, Georgia, Michigan, and we picked everything from onions to oranges. And in Tennessee, we planted tobacco. We picked strawberries and onions in Georgia, and then up in Michigan. So that's how it started. I mean, I don't know. In this country, if you don't have education, I mean, the fields is a good place. And that's how I started.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. So can you give us some context as somebody who has lived what it means to be a migrant worker? Who is a migrant worker, and how do they get here to the United States? Why do they come?
Yeah, so migrant workers, there's different types of migrant workers. There's you have a first generation, second, third generation. Sometimes migrants, that's just a way of life. They've been here for 5, 6 generations. I don't know if they enjoy it or if they don't know anything better. But for us, I can tell you that it was really hard. I mean, I always tell this story when I talk to the young people that I slept in the floor. I mean, being the youngest of 8, sometimes a room was as big as a classroom in a college setting, like just half of the room. And 8 of us lived there, and so I was the youngest one, so I knew my role. It was sleeping in the floor all the way till I came to college. And then just the poverty that goes with it, like the long hours. I remember when I was 12 years old, 11 years old is when I started working 16 to 18-hour shifts. And that's why the office that I'm in is so important, is to regulate those laws that young people shouldn't be working, that long. But a migrant is just somebody that moves from state to state, or maybe they're seasonal. They live here in Michigan. Maybe they just pick during the season. So that's kind of, and they come from all over the place. They don't just look like me. There's a big population of Haitians that are coming now to the U.S., and it's being used as a major force now, like the Haitian community, and then obviously the Mexican community has been along for very long, since before Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. So.
Great, thank you. And do you mind giving us a quick recap on who Cesar Chavez was for those of us who may not have heard of him before?
Yeah, so Cesar Chavez was, he was a veteran. He was born in Arizona. He went to the military. I think his family went through a financial crisis, kind of similar to what it's now, and that took him and his family into working in the fields, and that's when he saw firsthand how the inequalities of migrant workers, how they were being brought in and weren't being paid, or weren't being paid enough, or living in terrible conditions. So he was really fought, and he fought in a very quiet, very similar to Dr. Martin Luther King. He didn't fight with his fist or he fought with his mind and his humbleness, and I think that's what we can remind him of a fighter that fought, for his people, very kind, and that's who Cesar Chavez was.
Great, thank you. So although invisible to most people, the presence of migrant workers in many rural communities throughout the nation is undeniable. Since hand labor is necessary for production of blemish-free fruits and vegetables that consumers demand, why are they so invisible?
So the invisibility, I think it's intentional. So like I said, I've moved around in different cities. In Tennessee, we were very hidden from everywhere. I think in this country, we want to eat our salads, we want to eat our oranges, our apples, but yet we're hidden in some of the communities. Maybe it's because of zoning, or maybe it's for whatever reason. Maybe there's just perceptions that the property loses value when we're there. Whatever it is, but we do tend to be almost hidden in some cities, so people almost invisible. Like we come out on Sunday to do laundry, and in some cities, people go wild on Facebook or Twitter, like all these Mexicans are in shopping at Meijer, and I hear those stories constantly traveling through the state of people that are unaware, yet they don't realize that we're the ones providing the food, so that people eat. And so it's a very interesting, dichotomy that's happening. But yeah, I have 2 brothers. One of them that recently stopped working. He got injured, and he had been working his entire life. And then I have another one that was still picking apples, and nothing has changed. It's been, I don't know, I'm 34 years old, since I was little, and they always pick somebody else to come and do the work. So it hasn't changed a lot.
Thank you. So it's a great paradox of our food system that the very people who work to feed the U.S. struggle to feed their own families. Farm workers are among the poorest workers in the country. Child farm workers risk their safety, health, and education working for fields because their parents can't earn a living wage. Hazardous conditions are routine, as I'm sure you're familiar with, including pesticide exposure, extreme heat, lack of shade, and sometimes inadequate drinking water. Did you ever witness or hear of any of these conditions?
Yes, and again, this was in the middle of the 90s, early 90s when I was first exposed. And I remember as a child, playing through the fields and the airplanes would come and pesticide. And so I'm sure I was exposed. And, it's heartbreaking thinking back of pregnant women out there working and the children and the effects that it had. I personally, my father, he passed away when he was 62, so I was 17 years old when he passed away. And I know it's because of the intense work labor, the intense hours. I'm sure that I would pass away too if I continue to work 16, 17 hours shifts my entire life. And so I've experienced, like I said, the housing. There was snakes sometimes that we would kill. And no child, I'm sure my parents didn't, they had a hard time grasping with that, but that has been generations of poverty. I don't know how they grew up, and for me, it was probably a great living, even if there was snakes or we were in a part of a barn sleeping. It was a lot better than it was in Mexico. So there is still work that needs to be done. I remember, the trailer we lived in, Covert, Michigan, and my brother still lives there. I remember not having running hot water, and it was in the 1 year we stayed, it was October, November, December. I had to boil water before I go to school and just just took it in, and we didn't have no heater, and everybody slept in the floor to be close to the heater, the kerosene heater. And so those things are still here. I'm sure there's kids still sleeping in the floor. The housing's still no running water. I had to go out into a outhouse to go to the bathroom and shower outside of the house. They didn't have that. And this was again in my lifetime, and I'm only 34 years old, so I know that it's still out there. And so yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, no problem.
So I'm curious, you spoke a little bit about maybe how your parents might have been feeling, and I'm sure as all of us have been children at one point, and there's things that are covered up that our parents try to make things better, especially when situations maybe aren't as good or what they would hope them to be. Can you speak a little bit to maybe your family or other families' experiences with morale? That's something that I was curious about when researching about migrant workers. Are people optimistic? Are they complacent? Like, what is the sentiment around
Yes.
their situation?
So for us, it was always prayer. La Virgen de Guadalupe, God. My parents had so much faith, and I think that's where my sense of being. That's what carried us through this energy, this positive energy that things would work out. And so I was always blessed. Leaving the house or, when te persinas, and that's a constant reminder that there's hope. And for us as Catholics, that was something that I think allowed us to survive, because it was really, I can't imagine, if I was barely eating, I don't know if they were eating at all. And so when you think of that, I remember the cornflakes with water and mixing coffee powder to make milk, or Valentina. All the Latinos always have Valentina with salt crackers. And I remember those meals, so I can't imagine if I was going through that, what my parents were struggling with. But there was always, I had a brother who also passed away at 43. And I believe it was because of the hard life of working and the pesticides and all this. And he passed away at 43, but he was the life of our family. He was a happy guy, Ismael. He was just, I always think of him because he was just so happy. When I was listening to the Google with George Lopez, you always have somebody in the family that just brings joy. And Ismael was the one. He was always cracking jokes, no matter if it was a snake that they caught and he was trying to scare other kids. But he had that sense of happiness, and to an extent, I think it prepared me for going to get a doctorate degree. There's no way I could have made it if I didn't have those those struggles of being in a, hoeing or picking something or asparagus and looking at the long lines and thinking, man, can I make it through those lines? It taught me self-discipline to stay in my lane and stay focused on finishing whatever that was. So, but I think faith, if I were to say that carried us, I think that was the game changer, the faith, and that we still have. I talk to my mother every single day, and this morning I talked to her. I said, Mom, pray for me. And it's something that I feel like it's like a shield for me, and respecting other cultures, because I have a lot of friends that are from other cultures, and I also respect that as well.
Great, thank you. I've also always admired, I'm not sure if it's just with Latinos or people that maybe are underrepresented or other minority groups, this sense of happiness, even when there's nothing. I've witnessed that myself with my family in Mexico too, and it's just a really great reminder and gut check of, things aren't so bad.
Yes.
And not to say that someone's situation is worse or better than someone else's, but in hindsight, all of us here are in a place of privilege. And it's always a good reminder to kind of go back to where our roots are from in certain situations. So thank you. So what you were kind of talking about at the end there, I think pivots to my next question for you. Sometimes even the thought of pursuing an education for many marginalized communities can often be seen as foreign, impossible, laughable, or just not, like, it's not gonna happen for you. So what was your out? What was your driver? How did you make it into college?
So for me, it's going to be a little bit of a longer story, but it's important because I got to pay respect to the folks that have allowed me, this privilege of being in Google for all. Never in my life did I ever imagine that I'd be here with you or folks listening to this tape. Is that my sister, we're very traditional, especially with women. Latina women have it, I think, way harder than we do. And my sisters, all four of them, are tough, strong Latinas. And my mother, of course, we have to look up. But my sister Myra, she was the first one to came to Michigan State, and it was through night school. We went to night school that one time. And I was like 13 years old, the only time. And that was to make up credits so that I could graduate in 3 years. And Myra, we met this gentleman named Rudy Hernandez, who's from Southwest Detroit, who really set the tone. And Myra was smart enough to get into Michigan State, and so that's how it all started. Myra was accepted. She made this pledge that she was gonna get out of the lifestyle, because it is terrible when you're out in the dirty all the time and not making any money and just at home. And so she went to college. And it was because of Rudy that gave her that opportunity. And again, I believe it's faith. It's Rudy was there that night. If Rudy wasn't there that night, I don't know if we would have been here right now. But Rudy was there, met Myra, and Rudy was one of these educators. I love higher ed people, especially when they go out of their way. Rudy went and asked my parents if they could allow Myra to come to Michigan State, and they didn't really want to, but they didn't have a choice. So they said, "Ahí te la encargo." That's something that Latinos, once they say that, it's a gold, like go, right? "Ahí te la encargo." And so they did. And that's when my journey began. Basically, I didn't have a choice. My parents were like, "You got to go take care of Myra." Not that Myra needed me to take care of her. But that's how the Latino mindset is. And so I ended up with a 13. I thought was a 13 on my ACT. We checked, my wife checked, and she said I got a 15. So I couldn't even read correctly that I got a 15. And I'll be honest with you, again, it was because of Rudy I got admitted to Michigan State. But I took the test a few days before admissions, and I guessed on everything. And but again, I was blessed that it came with a package. You accept Myra, you're going to accept Felipe. And so I came in. I couldn't read, I couldn't write. When you're a migrant worker, you leave in October you leave the school, and then you leave to go back home to Texas, and then you leave early. You leave in March, and so you're always making up work. And so oftentimes that's a blessing too, because they didn't really pay attention if I was failing or not. I was always passed. And but the unfortunate part is that I couldn't read or write. I didn't know my ABCs, and so. But I was very clever and very smart. I made up credits. You know, my sister was helping me do my math homework. I passed, and the rest was history. You know, I came to Michigan State. A lot of tragedies happened. Like I said, my father passed away my sophomore year. My brother passed, and so there was a lot of tragedies. But you know, I can always look back, and that's a motivation that people out there are really good people. You know, the person that I least expected came in and gave us this opportunity, and so yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So for many first-generation students and minorities in general, it's one thing to get into college and then to be accepted, all of that, which is the first step. But there is still a large gap for completion of higher education. Now you've received 2 degrees, 2 bachelors, I believe, and as well as a doctorate. Can you talk about what drove you to finish not only 1, but multiple degrees?
Yeah, so like I said, it takes a village to do this kind of work. And I met a lot of great people. One of my friends, Juan Flores, who came with us, you know, we were in remedial math at that. We didn't even make it to the real classes, right? So we were remedial math, remedial writing, everything was remedial. And I could barely pass those classes, but you know, I've had Juan, I've had other great people. My sister Myra was there. I was very antisocial too, because of everything that I mentioned, all the stigma that happens in school, and but I've had good people, and I've met great people along the way. My friend Kelly Simmons, who I met through Myra, working in the KCP programs. I met my friend Danny, who's here also with me. We met in Greece and have stayed in touch, and I met, you know, great people like Sean Smith, Daniel Carrion, who works with me in the office, and Sean, who has had a vision to help students get out of the math and graduate, and you know, my wife. So there's been a lot of pieces, my family obviously, that have been supportive, but the biggest thing is that I've had this this vision, like this law of attraction, that if you think positive, like I always think of my brother Ismael, that sometimes money would just show up out of nowhere, and I would say, like, man, how do you do that? He didn't go to school or anything. He didn't even finish high school. He dropped out. But he had such positive vibe that the people that would come, everything that he had was just his thinking. He was so positive. And so I started applying that, just being so positive, and studying the law of attraction, and vision boards, and everything that I said. And people would laugh, right? It's laughable. Oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's laughable. But it's happened because of that. Like I was already signing doctor when I was with Danny. We were in Hungary, and I was writing postcards to my sister, writing Dr. Felipe Lopez Sustaita. And I was barely, you know, trying to get through my bachelor's degree, but I was already envisioning, you know, that I was going to get there. And so it's almost like it's already happened and it's not there yet. But I keep talking about my goals. And sometimes I get flagged for it, like, oh, you think you're so good, or te crees mucho. It's not that. It's just that sometimes we need positive role models. So that's why I really appreciate you allowing me this platform, because that's what it takes. Sometimes we have to put it out there and say that if we're gonna conquer the world, right? We have to talk about it and do it. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't hard. I mean, academically, if you can go from not reading or writing, being able to finishing in 4 years, it took a lot of hard work. Going on study abroads, I went to Greece, I went to Ghana in Africa, I went to Ukraine, and then in Mexico, and to make up credit so that I could graduate early. And I was able to get out in 4, so by the time I was 20 years old, and then I did my master's by 22. And then I had a family, and then I went and got my doctorate, and I got it all paid for, all my masters, my doctorate degree. So, and again, it wasn't just, it doesn't, things just don't happen. I had it already written that it was going to be paid and that this was going to happen. And so that's, and again, there's so many things that I'm sure I'm missing, and especially the rigor of the classroom. And teachers telling me, just to quit. And I remember, I won't put names out there, but I've been told just stop, you're not going to pass a class. And I refuse. And I think it's that ignorance that has brought me this far, is the ignorance to accept where you're at, and to just say, no, why not? If you can do it, if I see other people, if they can do it, why can't I? And so that attitude. And I'll tell you one last story before we go to the next thing. So I remember my senior year, I was 16 years old. I was in Covert, Michigan. And again, I couldn't read or write. So my teacher gave me an assessment, and I remember it vividly. She sat down with me and gave me this assessment, and she told me, she's like, you're at a third grade level. There's no way. I mean, even my kids now can spell better than I can. And so if I would have taken that literally, like, there was nowhere that I would have ever made it even to graduate high school, but I was too ignorant to know what that meant. And I'm very thankful for that ignorance as well, because it's helped me through other difficult times. So yeah, I mean, this is part of it is luck, a lot of luck and hard work. Yeah.
So on this note of, people coming into your life that gave you an opportunity, or maybe being a little bit lucky and having that grit to continue despite the challenges, there's a lot of people who, despite maybe having the same outlook, still don't make it. Mm-hmm. Is there a clear distinction between those who kind of make it out versus those who don't? I mean, is there a big difference that you know of? I'm curious more than anything to know.
That's a really, really, really good question, because I've met some very successful people. I'm thinking of a good friend of mine that went migrant as well, ended up going to Philadelphia to college, and then ended up, going to get her PhD in Stanford out of the same place. There's no difference between, if you're a migrant, you're a migrant. And then I've met others that have gone to work with the governor of Michigan and being their like chief of staff, and have worked for like 2-3 different governments. Same circumstances, but they had that extra. And Elva says it all the time. She says, "I'm made out of titanium, like no ice nor fire can take me down. I've been through the ringers." And so it's that extra like step. It's that swagger that if you can go through that, what I just told you, like just being so much in poverty, and you can survive, and then moving from place to place. Like, I think of my parents moving from their entire family and not speaking the language, not having a salary, nothing, to bringing us here and then making us, and be successful. I think they're people that don't quit, that because I've thought about that too, because I think of Myra. She works for the Border Patrol, and she ended up going to Washington D.C. and doing work with very important work that she was doing. And so I often think of that. But I think really it goes back to at least for me and the people that I know, is my family, and then our faith. We have faith in that things will work out no matter what, how hard it gets, or no matter. And I've always said this: you're going to have to drag me out dead. I'm not leaving this place until I finish what I came to do. And I get that from my dad as well. Like, there was no quit ever. And so, but I think there is something, it's that titanium, man. I guess that's the way we're going to put it, right? If you're built out of titanium, then you can go through anything: fire, ice, snow, and nothing's going to pull you apart. And so that's the way I would say. It's like NASA, right? They went up. Who would have thought that somebody would have ended up in space? and somebody dreamed big. They maybe they were told, no, you can't do this, but they refused to dream big. And I think that's how I see myself too. And I often tell young people that I talk to, we're just getting started. And no matter what, and I tell my kids, if you want to be president of the US, say it, speak it, and then let's go get it. Like, I don't want excuses. I don't care if you fall and you're broken into 100 pieces. You put yourself back and you go and get it. And so that's just the attitude I think that I learned from all my siblings, all 8 of them, who taught me lessons. And they built titanium, right? That's what I'm made out of. And that's exactly how I feel.
Beautiful, thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up in a career in government here working with the Hispanic Latino Commission of Michigan, what your role is also as the executive director?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I always ask myself that as well, because I went into higher education. So I did an undergrad in criminal justice, then I did a master's in clinical social work, and then I did a doctorate in education. And I've worked as a therapist, I've worked as an academic advisor, I've taught, and then I end up in government. And not really knowing why or how that even happens, right? It's like a puzzle. But I've always said this, and I constantly say this to my kids and to my friends, is that I work for God. And so there's probably a reason why I'm here. And I came at a very critical time. In 2016 is when I started. And the Latino community is very crucial. Like, with everything going on, I think I was built, like I said, out of titanium to take the roles that are going on, the issue that we have with education, the issue that we have with businesses, with immigration. And if anybody was tested to get there, I felt like it was a privilege and an honor for me, especially coming into this country, and being undocumented and understanding the migrant fields. And understanding too, to a certain extent, like the hoods, because I grew up in a barrio. That's the other piece that I haven't talked about. But growing up in a barrio is rough too. There's filled with gangs and filled with drugs. Luckily, I never got involved with any of that. Mine was pity. It was just hanging out with people and maybe fighting in school here and there. But it was never big time, so I never really talk about it. But if anybody was prepared to take on this role, I felt like it was God putting me in this position to go and do it. And I remember, and so this position, what it entails is advising the governor, advising the legislature, and then advising the state departments on Latino issues. So I travel all over the state. I've put in about close to 35,000 miles going from city to city, with the most vulnerable people. And again, that's a craft, to be able to go with the most vulnerable people and sit with them in their homes. And even for them to allow me to come into their homes has been a huge deal, because that's the only way I can advise the governor and the legislature, is to let them know, look, these are real stories, and I can name names, I can name places where I'm at. So I think I serve as a linkage to what I'm doing. And so it's very complicated work, but I feel like I'm growing and learning for something that whatever's coming next. And so that's really what the job entitles, and that's how I ended up. It was never planned. It was never something that I thought of. My plan, after I got my doctorate in community college leadership, was going for the presidency, for a community college presidency. And that's another one that people sometimes laugh. They're like, oh, that's impossible. Well, it's not impossible. I did my dissertation, and I went and visited these people that have done it. And I did my homework, right? So you figure out how other people did it, and then you go back and then you start working. It's like a lab. And that's what I did. I did my dissertation. I interviewed all these successful people. I came back and built my own recipe. And mine has looked different. I came to government. Others have gone directly through the pipeline. And very fortunate, I met a Latina that became a president at like 33. And those are the kind of people, right? We're out there. And I talked to her. I listened to her story. And and then go back and get to work. It's like, again, it's a lab, a never-ending lab. And that's what has been helpful, is also to use my resources and then, to apply them and be the best at what we do. And so I know that's a long answer, but that's.
No, they're great answers. Thank you. So you spoke a little bit about how you connect with these communities. We do a lot of diversity and inclusion work here at Google. So all the employee resource groups that we have usually have like a pillar that owns community impact. How do you go into these communities as someone who might seem as a person in power and connect with them? Are there strategies that you have? How do you best really get to the core and become a trusted person to these communities?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because you can't teach, right? Being humble, like that's the first step in whatever community, whether it's a Jewish community, whether it's a Latino community, the Caucasian community. You gotta come in knowing your place. You have to be humble. And when I go into these communities, because again, I'm like code switching all the time. I could be going to a predominantly black neighborhood, but still representing, the Latino community for alliances. And with the Jewish community, the Latino community, just alliances. So the first thing is humble, knowing that I'm not better than everybody, or that I'm not anything. Our community is very hard to crack, and so especially with the times right now, people don't trust people. If you come in, like even if you're going for voting, and they won't open the door. I still don't open my door. I'm still not 100%. Secure. So for me, it's always been, and meeting people where they are. Like sometimes I go to a factory, or I'll go to the schools and make myself visible. But the best thing for me has been to go with a trusted person in the community, like the person that already, I don't have the time to be that person, to go, to, I don't know, Alpina like 20 times from Lansing. I don't have that. So I have to do my research and figure out who is a person that's the most trusted, make that connection. And my job is to make sure that we have a connection right there, because if they don't open their doors, nobody is going to open the doors to me. So that's how I've been doing it. Whether it's Flint, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Ben Harbor, I have to go with a trusted person, and then that's how I create. That's how they sponsor me, right? So Google now. So if it's like Google, if I go to another city like California, and I go and ask for something, maybe I've done something with them and did good by my word. That is very helpful, and so that's how I've done it. It's through understanding who the real champion of the community is, and then going and then going there after that. Then it's up to me. I literally sometimes have 30 seconds to make a connection with these folks, and my ability to speak Spanish has helped tremendously, and my ability that I was born in another country, and I understand the fear that you have or what you do, that gives me like more brownie points too, and I never abuse that. I never take that for granted. I understand that that's personal and private, and that's how I operate. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to end off on one last question, and then we'll hand it over to the audience for some live Q&A.
Perfect.
What sense of responsibility do you feel? Often I can speak for myself too. My parents' conditions are not what I have today. I think that's true for many immigrant, second generation people here in the States. So what do you feel like you owe to your community? What is, I don't know, like your North Star in all of this,
Yes.
and how do you give back? How often do you visit home? Like, what is your contribution to pay back to where you came from?
Yeah, I owe everything to my community, to my family, to my ancestors, who sacrificed so much. And if I think I had it back, I just think back 60 years, and I don't know what they were going through, but I have a lot of debt, and I have goals, written down for the next 2 years of raising $100,000 for scholarships. I have an obligation to make sure that anybody that wants to go to school has an opportunity. I'm actually on the works and this is something that I've been talking to my friend Danny Rosenberg about, and Juan and Kelly, about writing a book and those proceeds going to help my community, right? So that others get opportunities. But more than that, going out into the actual communities and talking to the young people that have no hope or don't see people that look like them. And so I've been being more intentional about doing that, going out to places where nobody visits. And that's where the law of attraction, right? That's where it happens. So I have a friend, Eric Thomas, that's doing some work. He does it all over the world. He invited me to go to Las Vegas and to really work with the youth there. And he said, man, it's some of the schools, toughest schools that I've been to in this country. And so I'm excited about that, putting myself in a pit with a lion, right, on a snowy day, like the book, in a pit with a lion on a snowy day, is putting yourself in situations that are uncontrollable, and do the work, right? If the person that did NASA wasn't willing to take risks, then we wouldn't have that. So that's how I feel, as an obligation to go out and just risk, and sometimes maybe things that haven't been done, just try them. And so again, just a huge obligation. And for me, it's education. It's a pathway out of poverty. And so, but yeah, I owe everything I have to folks that gave me scholarships, that gave me opportunities. KCP paid for my doctorate degree. And then there's so many people that I'm thinking, that Dr. Tom Rios, Dr. Margie Rodriguez Lasage, Dr. Hall, that have been, in my life, that have pushed me to think bigger, to dream big, to not settle for anything. And my wife too, who always is on me, and to do more, to give more, give till it hurts, right? Like we have a commissioner, Jesse, who said, I want to give till it hurts. And so when you give, you receive. And so that's how I felt. Like I've been so blessed, and so I want to give. And so more than I can, give.
Great, thank you. So I would love to start off the Q&A. Something that I was thinking about last night when preparing for the talk was, as people who maybe have a better circumstance than our parents, ancestors, grandparents before us, how do we teach the sense of grit, like this sense of titanium that you were talking about? I think that that's something I wonder too. Like when I get married one day and maybe have children, how am I going to teach that drive? So you have children of your own.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, how do you teach that? How do you teach that culture or that ability to continue no matter what? And yeah, how do we pass that forward?
Yeah, so I have 4 children, Felipe, Amancio, Sion, and Hiladio. And that's what I'm trying to teach, because my father did such a great job. And like I said, he passed away at 17. His dad passed away at 17, and I want to break that chain. But what my dad did in those few years that I had him was he taught me how to have faith. I've never seen anybody that have so much faith and be praying for his family. And I'm sure sometimes we couldn't know how to eat, what we were going to eat the next day, but he was there praying. And I tell you something, we never didn't have food on the table, whether, I don't know if they were eating or not, but so that faith, and that's something that I teach my children, is to have faith. And then the work ethic, you can't expect great results if you don't put in the work. So we put them in martial arts, something that I didn't have access to, like the Y. They also go to the camps. I always tell them, the only camps I went with, migrant camps, right? Moving around, going to all these camps. So you guys get to go to swimming camp. So, and teaching them the value of that. I take them, not only do I take them to the YMCA camps, but I take them to go pick strawberries, go pick blueberries, apples. Like they know where their dad comes from. They know when they go and visit their cousins that there's not a lot, they might not get a lot of gifts still to this day. They might just get tamales, and that's okay. don't get too high up there and thinking that you're so good that just because you get good presents from us doesn't mean that when you go to your place, you might not get anything, and that's okay. So teaching them that sense of appreciation for what they have, and then what they have when they go out there, and then more about giving than just asking for. And so taking them to the homeless shelter and showing them strong movies, that are powerful, that will pierce their soul even at a young age. Those are the things that I've thought about, and then I have a band of brothers too that we meet, we pray, and we talk life, and I learn from them how to be a better father. Because again, I don't have, I don't have mine here physically. I have my father-in-law who's a great father, and so those are the type of things. If you want to elevate your game, you got to surround yourself by greatness, right? And so that's what we try to do, and then pass it on to the kids. The question for them is not, am I going to college? They're going to college. Like, they're already with their mom. She's working on her PhD, my wife Danielle, and this morning when they were doing their prayer, my wife left to Puerto Rico this morning, and they're praying for her mom. I hope my mom's good, and so they're learning that sense of awareness, like take care of people and be good. So I'm trying my best. It is very difficult because I can't simulate living in the hood and picking up a fight just so that I don't get picked on. They're not gonna have to live like that, or cornflakes with water. They don't have to worry about that. We have a refrigerator full of milk, that they can do that. But as much as I can, and telling them stories like, look, man, we grew up poor, so appreciate it. And the fact too that I don't have any pictures from my childhood, they can't even see that. They don't. I don't know how I looked when I was little, and so they have all kinds of pictures, right? Even they're in daycare, they're already selling you pictures. We didn't have that. We couldn't afford that. It was eating or that picture. So just teaching them those things. That's a long answer, but
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
All right, we'll open it up for live Q&A for anyone who would like to. So we'll have a mic being passed around. Thanks.
First of all, thank you for the work you do for your community. I think many of my colleagues, myself included, are from immigrant families. I'm first generation myself. I'm curious, your work is focused on lending a voice to those who might not have channels to voice their needs. Personally, how do you prioritize the needs of the communities you're hearing? You mentioned you're motivated a lot by the pain, and I think you probably measure yourself by the impact that you're having. I can imagine that the impact that you don't get to have because you have to choose causes a lot of pain as well. But what goes into your mental calculus, and how do you decide which of the issues you encounter on a daily basis gets the ears that it deserves?
Yes, that's a very difficult question, especially with a very small budget, and a very small staff. We constantly, I think we use that Google approach. And Daniel would tell you, we have a board, a to-do list board, and it's important people don't do it, right? They don't communicate. And so we sit there literally and we spend 1 or 2 hours prioritizing what's going on, whether it's a bill that's being introduced or whether it's a community that's in need. And we evaluate that, and then we deployed whatever resources that we have. So we have to be very, very strategic with what we do. And it's kind of, and it always reminds me of when I was in school, the same thing. I had to prioritize, and with a family, always multitasking. And so, but that's how we gauge that, because you're right, there's so many issues, and right now with the current political climate, it's very difficult. Whether it could be immigration one day, it could be bullying the next day, it could be an incident that happened at another community, and so it's a constant. Sometimes you're in 3 places at once if you didn't think that's possible, and we're making a call and an email and then physically going there. So that's how we do it. And again, I work for God, so He's guiding me, and so in this work, and very blessed to be doing that. And again, like, this is part of it too, like having this platform that Dominic has given me the opportunity is so great, because we're talking to our people and at a larger scale than I've ever done. And so this is huge for me. And so taking the time to come here and do this is very important. So, but that's how we gauge, and we try to do that.
So from traveling around the state, what's the current state of Michigan? Like, if you're meeting with the governor, what's like the 2-3 minute speech to update them as far as like what's happening in the Michigan community?
Yeah, and again, it depends, right? Like when it is, because sometimes it could be economic or whatever. So what we did so that we don't have the 2-3 minutes is that we got a really good team together. Daniel, he's a researcher, does all this with numbers. And then we brought in Jose Mendez, who was our designer. And so what we did, not just to do that 2-minute or 3-minute spill, we did a whole a newsletter, and we put the issues there along with a letter, and then through communication as well. So we try to be creative, almost like Google, man. Try to put everything out quickly because you don't have time sometimes. And so I got the team to do that, and that has been very effective. It's helped us increase our budget. It has helped us, go viral in terms of we got a standalone website. The governor approved, and there's only like 4 or 5 departments that have a similar, and we had the staff to do it too. So, and then to make it into bilingual too, so that people that want to apply for a license or do something, they have that access. So that's how we've done it, through communication like that, through nice graphics, because we all know that nice graphics, it gets people's attention. And so we've just been creative, and when we do have that time, it's quickly like, look, you have this coming, whatever, and we move on. But we're trying with what we have. It's like, being a migrant, you figure it out with a little time or little money. So.
Hola, mucho gusto por venir. Gracias por venir.
Sí, gracias.
I'm trying to frame the question, but I was curious. So I moved from Mexico, born and raised. I moved 2 years ago, and I went through a long process to get my citizenship. I'm still trying to do that. So I have a lot of privilege that I can read and write in English and afford a lawyer that helped me out, and it's been a very difficult process. So after all this conversation, I'm just very curious, how do these farmer workers get any help, or any organizations that help them to, if they are aiming to get a citizenship, how do they get that help? Is there any ways for them to get it if they don't have either the means or the language to do that?
Sí, muchas gracias. Y lo hizo en español, tú. So le voy a contestar en español.
No.
I'm just kidding. But so yes, there is a lot of organizations, and again, we have limited resources but we partner with a lot of great organizations that do pro bono, lawyers that have reached out to us, and we can deploy resources quickly. Stuff that's in Spanish and English, which sometimes people don't think, and then there's people that can't even speak. Right, so for us, it's tag teaming, and if there's a place, say for example, farmers, there's a community of migrants that can't read or write, letting that organization know so that they could deploy some lawyers that can go and kind of answer those questions. We've also partnered with a Mexican consulado, and done some work with them as well to send them to the community so that they could get their passport, because some of them can't go. Or get registrations or whatever. So it's all about using what you have, and then putting things in place to make it work. So that's some of the work that we're doing. So I'm so happy. So you work for Google? Yes. Man, great. You guys, we're all over the place. Right?
All right, so we're almost at time. Probably have time for one more question, if there is one.
Any burning questions? Oh, we got one.
First of all, thank you for sharing your story. I think it was like a really touching and impressive. How you managed to break the cycle? I think that's kind of the key over here. So my question is, you were lucky. A lot of us were lucky to have like mentors or to run into people that actually made a difference in our lives. How do you say that can be scalable if you don't, for example, if you just don't have the opportunities and you just don't happen to step into someone that is willing to help you? Like, how can we actually make that a bigger plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we all need mentors, right? Like but if you're not in those spaces, right, you don't get those opportunities. So what I would say is that we as because now we're all here, we're in a place of privilege. We are mentors, whether we see it or not. So for me, it's just taking it to the next step. If my wife gave me permission to go to Las Vegas for 4 days to work with those kids, and going where they are, because there's no way they'll ever get to me. And I'm not even a big deal or anything, but I can go and maybe share some positivity, then I'm willing to do that, whether it's there or whether it's going to Central America or wherever. Shoot, we were in Africa, and I learned so much from those folks. And so, but some people can't get out, right? Like they don't have the access or the privilege to do that. So I just think that we have a responsibility to go out and do that work and be intentional about it, and yeah, because everybody needs something. You know, I think none of us in this room would have been here if we didn't have access to somebody that believed in us, and so it's critically important. So yeah, so for me, it's just going out and doing it more and more intentional with a mission, and that's something that I do too to close this. That has helped from me going out sometimes, and I go and speak and I offer to mentor. So I go and I have mentees, and I wake up at 6 a.m. I do that pledge to wake up at 6 a.m. with MSU college students, and I walk during the entire school year, and then I tell them the whole purpose of this is to build an army. So I'm gonna mentor you. I'm committing that 2 hours or that whole semester, 1 hour each week. And then I expect for you to go back and mentor 2 people next year when you come. And that's how you build an army, right? So intentionally, they're going out and seeking that. So those are just some strategies that I've used. And so thank you for that question.
I just want to echo that, just going into communities with intention, and then I think secondly, meeting people where they are. There's sometimes this false expectation that people are just going to naturally be interested to speak to all of us, which I really think is false, and we have to be more aware and more willing to sometimes also take off like our Google hats and come in as people, approach people as Latinos, as Asians, as Black people, as whatever your identity is, to better connect and maybe break through to someone who might need it. So thank you so much. Felipe, thank you for joining us at Google today. It was a pleasure, and really appreciate your authenticity and vulnerability to share your story. So thank you so much for coming. Give a round of applause for Dr. Felipe.
You.